Alrighty, it looks like people joining in is kind of slowing down, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone, my name is Erin Fox. I'll be kind of coordinating the back end of the event, so if you have any questions throughout the event or at the end, please feel free to plop those in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and I'll be sharing those with Anne. If you would like to review this event later on, we'll be posting it on our YouTube page, so just keep an eye out for that. The link is available here. It'll also be presented to you in a follow-up email, along with a post-event evaluation. So if you have any comments or feedback from this event, we appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. And again, that'll send in an email after this event. But again, thank you all for joining us. If you are new to the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, we are a research center for the University of Michigan. We offer a variety of different dementia-related research studies, caregiving, and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in getting involved in research or participating in one of our Lewy body dementia support groups, our wellness programs for caregivers, or those living with early stage memory loss, please feel free to visit our website or our social media for more information, or reach out to me and I can point you in the right direction. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Anne Mondro. Anne came to the University of Michigan in 2003 in the School of Art and Design. She serves as an associate professor, teaching a variety of studio art courses in conceptual development, design, jewelry, and metalsmithing. In 2006, she developed a community engagement course titled Retaining Identity, the Role of Creativity in the Healthcare Setting. Designed to explore creativity and the potential of art to aid in the human spirit during times of illness, this course collaborates with the Geriatric Center at the University of Michigan. She also partners with art and design students with persons with dementia to focus on strengthening the community empathy towards the arts. So she'll be sharing some of her findings with us today, and we are very happy to have her here. So without further ado, Anne?
Hello, thank you, Erin, for the introduction. Hello out there. This is my first official presentation, so for Zoom, so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it'll all work out. So today I'm going to talk about connecting through art, and really the many ways that arts can be used to for people living with memory loss and for caregivers to engage with them in activities that are inviting and enjoyable. My name is Anne Mondro, and I am a studio artist as well as a community artist. So my practice is a little bit of working out in the world, creating and facilitating programming, primarily for people living with memory loss and their care partners. And then in my studio practice, I take those experiences and I reflect on them, and that is what guides my studio making. I really became passionate about working with this particular community because of the people I have been able to work with. They have truly inspired me to want to continue to develop and facilitate arts programming. So I want to start with a quote by Dr. Gene Cohen. Dr. Cohen was a leader in creative aging research, where he found that creativity can improve our mental and physical health. And this quote really speaks to me about creativity. Creativity is a natural, vibrant force throughout our lives, a catalyst for growth, excitement, and forging a meaningful legacy. And thinking about this and the arts and what can the arts do, you know, when I talk about the arts and being creative, we're all creative people. And you don't have to be a professional artist to engage in this work. The arts are really an invitation to have fun, experiment, discover new things, engage with others, find a moment of peace, and honor one's life history. And this quote as well kind of speaks to the arts as not something you should feel anxious about engaging in, but it's just an opportunity to play, it's imagination, discovery, and a way to connect. When I develop programming and I teach students at the university, I teach a course called Memory, Aging, and Expressive Arts. The philosophy is to really design creative experiences that promote moments of wonder and discovery, to build those opportunities for connections. For people living with memory loss, there are many proven benefits, such as maintaining a sense of self, providing meaning and purpose in daily life, an opportunity to exert a degree of control over one's world, and a sense of pride and accomplishment. The National Endowment for the Arts has identified that there is an increasing need for recognizing the whole person during times of illness. And the arts can really help provide this opportunity to opportunity to really think about the whole person. There's also a lot of social benefits. So an opportunity to build relationships with others, develop trust, expand a person's support network. In the class, where you have students that are paired with community members, and this might be the first time that many of the students are working with people living with memory loss. So it's an opportunity for them to broaden their perspective and understanding of people experiencing changes in memory, as well as for an opportunity for the person to broaden their social network. Although I'm not a social worker, I do tend to embrace Thomas Kitwood's person-centered care approach. And I think the arts are a way that you can really create some person-centered activities. And thinking about when developing activities, keeping in mind that dementia is the diagnosis, is not the person, and focus more on the uniqueness of the individual, what their life histories, interests, and preferences are, and developing activities that can tap into those interests. So I always like to include a little bit of research on the findings of creative experiences for people living with memory loss. Time Slips is a program that has been studied. It's a storytelling intervention. It's a kind of group storytelling activity where you can generate a story together. And in the study that they assessed the program for persons with dementia residing in long-term care facilities, and they found that the residents were more engaged and more alert. They were more frequent staff interactions and social interactions and engagement, and that the staff that participated in the program had a more positive view of the residents. This is another study on a program called Here Now out of Seattle. And it's an arts engagement program for persons with dementia and their care partners that involves both museum, gallery tours, and art making. In their findings, they have found that the program promoted enjoyment, socialization, joint respite, and personhood as some of the key benefits, and socialization and meeting others who share common concerns were also identified as program benefits. So I have done a little bit of research on a program that I worked on with my colleagues at U of M called Retaining Identity, Creativity, and Caregiving. And this was an 8-week structured art experience for persons with memory loss and their co-residing caregiver. And it was hands-on art making as well as an art-related discussion. It's a little different than other programs in that the first 4 weeks we worked solely with the caregivers and taught them 4 different activities. And then the following 4 weeks, the caregivers guided their care recipients through the same activities. And they were 4 visual art activities. And in the program, we had 60 couples participate. And so the 30 caregivers provided a survey feedback for us. And we found that the program, 3 main themes emerged from the program: caregiver growth, which refers to comments that identified specific ways that they can improve their communication, such as "my patience has improved, so we can interact more effectively." Caregiver awareness developed a deeper understanding and perspective of navigating cognitive impairment to improve their communication skills. So comments such as "my spouse was able to come up with their own creative ideas, good to step back and let him continue on his ideas," and creative discovery. Comments that refer to discovering the benefits of creative endeavors for them and their family members. This included, "I learned that even though I do not have much artistic ability, I had fun learning new techniques and look forward to doing these again with my husband." So that gives you a little bit of the research, and now I want to talk about some of the programs that are out there. So there's different types of programs. The first I'll just introduce is museum-based programs. And these are mainly conversations around artwork. The Museum of Modern Art in New York has a program. University of Michigan Museum of Art, UMA, also has a program. And they are very much geared towards using visual thinking strategies and open guided questions. So could be questions such as, what do you notice when you're looking at this painting? And how do you feel when you're looking at this painting? So many museums have programs such as this. I will say MoMA does have some online curriculum and training that you can look into. There's also hands-on art making programs specifically designed for people living with memory loss. The Detroit Institute of Arts has a hands-on program. Birmingham Bloomfield Art Center. I'm also working on a program called Artful Approach, which is to train both professional and family caregivers. Oh, and I should know that there's, depending on where you live, just look around. These programs are limited, but the larger museums and some of the art centers are starting to develop more and more programming. So look around at your local art resources and art organizations. There's also music, writing, and dance programs for people living with memory loss. Time slips, which I mentioned in the research study, they have online some training programs specifically for family caregivers. StoryCorps is online as well, where you can you do interview with your loved one remotely. They're working on some video conference technology, and they have a memory loss initiative. So that's kind of capturing life histories. There's dance for Parkinson's. Music can also be listening to music, just composing a playlist of favorite songs. I've seen a lot of success with drumming. So something very kind of simple, you can follow a beat or rhythm. So drumming communities or just having a drum could be a great way to engage. I also want to talk about nature, although it's not necessarily a traditional traditional art form. I've seen firsthand a lot of benefits of nature, and there's research that supports this, that nature really is physically can improve your well-being, just being in nature. And for people living with memory loss, it's an opportunity to engage through a variety of senses. You think about touch and um, also smell. So you can really kind of bring together activities that engage a variety of the senses. I worked on a community art project called Between the Earth and the Sky with my colleague, Charlie Michaels. And in this program, it was designed for an intergenerational art program for youth and people living with memory loss. We did several different art activities. And our big summer activity was a garden installation. In this activity, I at first didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, we made all these concrete planters, and then we're going to plant together. And we were working with youth from Corner Health in Delaney, Michigan, their leadership council. And they were really excited. And we also partnered with EHM Senior Solutions in Saline. And I thought, well, let's give this a try and see how it works. And it was really successful. Not only was it an opportunity for our the residents to share their experience with gardening and cooking. It just opened up so many conversations. But it was also an opportunity for them to show the youth how to properly plant and really to be a mentor in this project. And then you can see the finished piece. We had a couple of different configurations of that piece. And this is a comment from one of the youth members that participated. I love coming here. I don't think that once this project is over, that this will be the last time I will work with this age group. I'm also learning different art projects I can do with my grandmother. So again, thinking about the arts as a way to connect, and not only connecting amongst family members, but different populations in our community, and using the arts as that way to learn about each other and to build empathy. This is just another example here of how I've used nature, where nature was the inspiration for the activity. So here we looked at beautiful plants at M.F.A botanical gardens, and then did some kind of contour drawings and ink and watercolor. So kind of bridging being in nature and then creating imagery of nature. So many of the programs I've shared with you, I know aren't happening right now due to the pandemic. So I wanted to run through some slides on how you can engage with a loved one at home. So I'll give you some pointers and guidelines, and then run through a few activities and how you can modify them. So let's go through those guidelines. When thinking about designing a creative experience, you want the activity to be age appropriate. Use good quality materials. So you don't need professional quality art materials, but you just want some nicer markers. The craft stores have all kinds of different options. There's an online art store called Blick that has lots of different options and different price ranges. You want to make sure that the project is person-centered. So again, really focusing in on the individual's interests and taking that into consideration. And one thing that we always work with our students when they're developing projects is to always have a plan A, B, and C ready to go, because it just might not work. So having a backup project is very handy. If you're doing this at home, you might try something one day, it might not work. Maybe you try something later in the week, a different art activity. When you're implementing a project, it's really important to keep your workspace clutter-free. Not put out all the materials on the table, but just what you're using in that particular step, which leads to the second bullet point. Break down the projects into step-by-step instructions. So again, you just want to provide what you need to at that particular moment. I'm going to show you a collage watercolor project where first you collage and then you watercolor. So for that, you would first only work with the images. Don't even have the paints out. Don't even go there yet. And then when that part is done, you would bring out the paints. Gestures are very helpful when you're trying to communicate your instructions. Choice is very important. Everybody wants to have pick what color they want and have a choice in that. Sorry, my voice is losing a little bit there. And focus, of course, on what the person can do. And that's really important. You don't want to pick an activity that is just going to be frustrating for both of you. You want an activity that you can enjoy and you can do together and be proud of. And thinking about that, also just focusing on the process. Again, don't think of it as a task, but really focusing on something you can connect with and have fun with. It's okay if you have a plan and it doesn't work out quite right. You can relax the rules, you can see what happens, but have fun with it. You should both be enjoying the experience. I really think this is a great quote to sum up what all those guidelines we're trying to say. Is just it's different. You might not see yourself as a professional artist, and that's okay. Just try it and see what happens. So I want to go into a couple different projects. These were projects that were developed by students in my class, Memory, Aging, and Expressive Arts. And you could easily modify these to be just a little more simple projects that you can do at home. So the first one is called Legacy Newspaper. And in this particular project, the student and community partner the student was a graphic design student, so she created a whole template for a newspaper. And they worked together to fill in all the various areas, such as what would be on the front page. So this is where she was asking in those open guided questions to the community partner about his life experiences, his history, his family, and that started to fill in the content. So they had the words of wisdom page, which was your advice column, right? They did a sports section. So you could, without having to make a newspaper, you could do an activity where you're just discussing what would be your words of wisdom. What were some your most adventurous tales that you want to capture? So you could just sit and talk about these experiences and start writing them down. Another activity, there's a visual art activity here, and this is the collage and watercolor painting activity that I mentioned. So for this project, and this was also person-centered, because the community member that the student was working with loved to hike and travel a lot. So the student started cutting out pictures that they were collage with of this trees, natural landscapes, and then working together, they collaged the pictures. And the student, they created their own landscape, and the student, once they had the placement down, the student glued them down, and then they watercolored to complete the scene. And in this project, I will say, they started with a heavier board of thicker paper, watercolor paper that could support the watercolor without the paper all crinkling up. And collage, how could you simplify this? Collage is a wonderful activity. You can have the images pre-cut, so then you're just placing images on the paper and gluing them down together. You could do this as the 2 steps where you do the collage one day and then add watercolor the next day and see what happens. Another activity, this is a quilt pattern painting activity, also person-centered, where really focused in on the interests of the individual. This individual, she loved to quilt. And so the student decided that she would make canvases that had patterns of traditional quilt designs transferred onto them, and then they could paint those. Now, an easy way to modify this would be to download some adult coloring pages or purchase an adult coloring book. Look for simple designs that aren't too complicated unless the person enjoys that. And you could just use colored pencils. If you wanted to explore paint, you could trace the design onto a thicker paper, and you could use watercolor, or in this case, acrylic. So that just gives you a little bit, hopefully, that you can think about when engaging in the arts and some projects that you might want to try at home. So in summary, art is a meaningful activity that you can engage in together. It's an activity that I would say, just give it a try. Don't worry that you're not a professional artist. Everyone can be creative. And if you just take in some of those key considerations that I mentioned earlier, you can really create an activity that you can both be proud of. So this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, and I think I'm going to pass it on to Erin. I know I went pretty quick there, but hopefully we have some questions and we can talk about that. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Anne. That was wonderful and so enlightening. So many great ideas. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Do you have suggestions, Anne, for anyone who might have a tremor but wants to participate?
Yeah, so that is, I'm trying to think back through through the people I've worked with, I think you could go, if you wanted to do a painting project, if you just focus on much bigger brush, so you have a larger area, you could go with a larger brush, and that would kind of help ease, and then you don't have to worry about painting in the lines. I would definitely think about activities, visual art activities, where you can fill the paper with color. So you don't, again, you're not having to worry about any problems there. If like putting paint, I can imagine a watercolor project where you just kind of start putting color down and letting the colors bleed together or something of that nature. So that could be something you can try within the visual arts, if you wanted to. Thinking about some of the other projects, another way to work, which I didn't really talk about, is what we call letting the person with memory loss be the creative director. So what that means is that the facilitator can be the hands, can do the actual making, whereas, and then the person can guide the color choices. They can guide the placement. So let's say that collage project again. You don't have to. You can, as the caregiver, you can do the gluing down, right? So just moving the images around, or even asking, where should this image go, in the top right corner, or what about here? Kind of, it would physically show like the placement, and letting the person decide, and then you be those hands. So you're still engaging together in the activity, but you're taking out that concern.
Great, thank you. And do you have a website where folks can see pictures of these and other projects?
That is a good question, and I should, but I don't right now. I am working on the Artful Approach, which is a whole set of project activities. So it's slowly rolling out, and that will be out shortly. So yeah, so we're working on kits that basically has all the materials and supplies in it ready to go. So we're just working on that now. But please feel free to contact me, and I can share more information with folks.
Can you share a little bit? There's some interest on this photo right here on your closing slide, what this is.
Yeah, so this is part of the Between the Earth and the Sky project, where I mentioned we did the big garden art piece. Well, with every session, and I always talked about the plan A, B, C, I always had another activity ready to go that the youth and residents could work on together. So in this case, I took just a geometric design, and my studio assistant kind of blew it up into large scale, kind of segmented it, and then traced the segments onto canvas paper. And we outlined them in a thick black marker. And then that would be our B project. So we would garden a bit, and then we would bring these out and paint together. So each one, it didn't matter. What was really nice about this particular project is you could start it and stop it whenever. So you could pull this out, do a little painting, leave it till next week, pull it out again, and everybody contributed. So there wasn't one panel that was one particular person's, but just everyone did a little bit on each panel, and then we glued them all together, and it became the completed design. So, and that was part of our garden celebration for that project.
Great. At what level of cognitive impairment would you say that you can implement art? Can it be used with advanced dementia, with behavioral disturbances, or more so in the early stages?
Yeah, so I've worked with early stages, moderate stages, as well as some individuals in the later stages, and it has worked with individuals in later stages of memory loss. The things you need to think about there is facilitation in terms of painting. I've done projects where I really have to show or guide the brush on the paper. I've worked with individuals who I've had to, there's different approaches to facilitating. I talked about being creative director, but there's also a mimic approach where we use where I sit next to an individual and kind of show the gesture, and then they can kind of repeat what I'm doing or duplicate, kind of replicate what I'm doing to get individuals started. A larger brush, kind of limiting the color choice. So thinking about there's still choice, but you're not overwhelming someone with a million options. 2 is a choice. I've done things where kind of more advanced step than the mimicking with the paintbrush, where I've actually started to paint on the canvas and had the person follow with their brush right behind me. And that worked out really well. And then it is a lot of trial and error and just thinking about, again, kind of, you know, I think in terms of visual art, some open-ended painting. I've done a project with where you make one mark on paper. It's kind of a starting guide. And then that's something that you can follow. I've seen that a few times where folks with more advanced stages, they like make a border around the shape and they keep outlining, and it becomes it's a beautiful piece in the end. I've also seen projects where you can grid a paper and then work just within that section with a particular color. And you know, you have to try it and see what works. But I think there are opportunities. There's also opportunities, I think, to explore those other senses. So touch in particular. So the planting, you know, just being in the presence of those plants and being able to smell them and touch them, things of that nature, is an activity that's it's engaging. So because there's some options. The majority of the projects I'm doing right now are probably more early but moderate stages of memory loss.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on engaging with people who may have resistance to the idea of doing art? For instance, people who may look at art as too childish or never before interacted with art earlier in their lives. Yeah.
Yes, I run into this a lot. As you can imagine, there is an assumptions that, oh, I'm not creative, this is only child's play. So how you get around that? And there's, I have a couple different strategies. One is, let's just try this. It's an activity, it's something we can do together. Hey, I have this activity. I don't necessarily say, let's do this art project. You know, like, let's try this activity out. And sometimes I will start the activity in front of them and slowly bring them in through conversation. So you have the activity, you're like, I'm not interested. Well, if you start it, you kind of invite them in. Well, you know, what color would you want to put here? and then you can slowly, I've been able to do this where you can slowly pass it off to the person and let them finish the project for you. Or again, it's just that conversation. You're the hands, but you are asking all the questions about the design aesthetics of the piece. Other ways I've addressed it is, especially depending on the activity, oh, you know, let's make this as a gift for your family. So this is something you could then give to, you know, a spouse, or that works really well. Like, oh, let's make this for someone. So thinking about who you would gift this to is a way to get around it. And then, you know, the other way is just that, let's just try this, you know, just go in and just be like, let's try this today. I don't really know what I'm doing either. Let's see where it goes.
Have you ever tried using clay with dementia patients, or yeah, anything else besides painting?
Yeah, clay would be great. It's for me, because I go to sites, either with the class, we take students to a site, or I myself am traveling to different facilities. It's really hard to take the clay back and forth to fire it, but clay tiles would be really great to make. So there's definitely potential there. Craft projects. We've been doing some greeting cards, beaded bracelets, bird houses. All those things will work. Yeah, you just have to kind of facilitate the project, really think about the steps, how you break it down, how you make it feasible. And yeah, so I think clay is great. I myself haven't done too much with it just because of logistics.
Sure. We have an attendee who works with an Alzheimer's patient who used to be a very passionate artist using different media, now really enjoys freehand drawing. It's very colorful and unstructured, and this patient spends hours on it. He says, any suggestions to help structure it or try to interpret what her drawings might mean?
Oh, so to structure the activities, this would be something, I might go back through my slides. Let's see. Well, maybe not. I'm going to mess it all up. To structure the activity, this could be something where thinking about the design layout, you could do like the grid. You could grid the paper, and then they work within a grid. So I'm thinking about design aesthetics first. You could do something where you lay down ink as one layer, and then they add paint on top of it. So you're building layers. In terms of structuring it, I'm trying to think what else you could do. You could do it as a series, and so if you wanted to think about making an exhibition, so creating a series of artwork and then going through the work and selecting like what ones to kind of open up a conversation around the work, like what ones would you put together? As far as interpreting it, I'm not trained as an art therapist, so I personally don't get into the deeper thinkings about why they're making that particular piece. But you can use guided, open-ended discussion questions such as, what do you see? So that's, what does this remind you of? What do you see? What did you discover? And that could open up some conversation that could then create a new series of work, or kind of look at the whole collection of work and have that conversation. Could be a way to kind of think about kind of what you might want to do next in terms of project development. Drawing, there's, playing with, I think, texture would be really good, with layers and texture. Could be something worth exploring. There's a lot of projects where you can kind of stamp one layer, again, kind of multiple layering, stamping or inking, and then collaging and painting. So those are all kind of new ways to build in discovery. So yeah, there's some ideas, a little bit all over.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Last question. You mentioned the kits earlier, and it sounds like there's still kind of a work in progress. Where will those be available for folks who are interested?
Yeah. So right now we're just running some pilot sessions. We're doing a pilot session where we're training professional caregivers in a memory support care center. And then we're also doing a pilot session for family caregivers that, especially now with the pandemic, we want to try some of it's all virtual training, and then the kits would be mailed to you and you try these at home. So it's evolving as kind of where we are in the world right now. And we do have, hopefully once we get the pilot session done, kind of website will get started. Please email me. I'll keep you on our radar, our mailing list, and we will have a website up. But first we need to pilot everything, make sure it works, and get some feedback from people that use it to see what is really successful or not. Thank you for asking.
Great. I think that covers all of our questions. If anybody has any others, please feel free to pop those in. But I think we got through them all.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anne. I personally really enjoyed, I think others did too, based on all the questions that we got. Do you mind progressing just to the last slide for some closing announcements?
Sorry. There you go.
Perfect. Great. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Here's a couple of ways to stay in touch with us. The previous slide had Anne's contact information. Feel free to reach out to me with any additional questions, or Anne herself. If you want to stay in the know of other upcoming events, feel free to subscribe to our e-newsletters. The website for that is up there. Our next talk is happening at the end of September. Details here in the bottom right corner, but we'll also be sending out promotions for that too. If you want to get involved in research, a couple of links up in the top left. And like I said, we'll be posting a recording of this talk on our YouTube channel, which the link to that will be in the follow-up email coming after this presentation ends. So thank you so much. Looks like we have one last question maybe. I'll address that after. But thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate you coming, and thank you again, Anne.
Thank you. Bye.